UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself and reservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself and reservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
You know, have you lost count? $113 people. So, hello, everybody, by the way, if you didn't get it the first time. It's lovely to see you. And so you're so welcome. Some lovely names. Oh, I'm muted. All right. It wasn't me.
I was muted as well. I've basically just had a mare at the beginning. I've just muted everyone. What a great way to start the show. I'm doing incredibly well. Well done, Paul.
It's because we've got the wonderful, amazing Ray Goodspeed on the show today, and we're all just in a state of total panic about it. We're sort of all fluttery butterflies in the stomach. So let's just say hello to him before we start. Ray, hi, hello.
Hello, how are you? All right.
No, we're all absolutely fine, and all the better for having you on the show. Tell us, for people who don't know you, assume that the people who are listening don't know who you are. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, my main thing now, I'm involved with a website called Left Horizons, which is a group on the left who we're active in and around the Labour Party. I think it's safe to say we orientate ourselves towards the trade unions and the Labour Party, but we're a group of sort of Marxist socialists, and we want to build that sort of socialist campaign. I'm also involved in the union. My job for a while, after a few years as a local government officer, then I changed jobs to do English language teaching, and so I'm now involved with a union called the IWW, the old Wobblies they call it. I'm doing lots of work with them, representing people going to industrial tribunals, employment tribunals rather, living in the past, and just general standing on picket lines, making trouble for myself. And for my sins, I'm still miraculously secretary of my local Labour Party, my CLP.
I used to be an English teacher, and I'm the secretary of my local Labour Party. So I expect the letter coming through the letterbox every day, particularly after episodes of Political Unmuted. We say hello to Kerry Wilkes. Hello, Kerry.
Oh, hiya. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, God, no. Are you going to get us all into trouble again, Kerry? We just love it when you do that.
It depends. I like getting people into trouble and myself, as we all know.
Well, we look forward to it. And then Paul is the boss. Hi, Paul.
Hi, and when I'm the boss, things go wrong. So maybe I need to be replaced. Maybe we need to have a like kind of workers' uprising. Not that we have any workers, we're all equal here. So.
The thing here is that it's the workers who are the bosses, isn't it? Jacqueline, yes, I did used to teach history, but in the last 10 years of my career, I switched to English. So that's a really good student could teach history instead. Right, okay, let's start. And it's going to be the discussion of the week. And to tell you the truth, we may not get to the last question at all because everybody's got so much to say about the things that are happening. So I'm going to go first to Ray because Ray wanted his moment of the week to be Posey Parker. Tell us about what's all this about and sort of who and what and why important.
Well, I mean, this week, there's dozens of things you could talk about, strikes and things in France and all sorts of stuff. There's so much news this week. But but for me specifically, as an LGBT man, seeing Posey Parker go off to New Zealand and have to flee with a tail between her legs was extremely satisfying. I mean, let's get clear. I'm not in favour of like no platforming anybody who has any sort of concerns about trans people. That's I all my life I've had to sort of take people's strange sort of obsessions, strange sort of their concerns, their worries, or their miseducation, and just deal with it sensibly and argue with it and see what happens. But there are some people on that kind of so-called gender critical, they like to call themselves, who are just right-wing adjacent, and at the end of that line there are some who just play around with actual fascists. And Posey Parker or Kelly J. Keane Minshall, sorry. Why is it always these fascists have like double-barreled real names, like Yaxley Lennon and all this business? But Kelly J is a mate of Terry Robinson. Terry. What's his name? Robinson? I've forgotten his name. Terry Robinson, isn't it? Tommy, that's it, Tommy. And so she has his organisation called Hearts of Oak. She has him sort of speaking at her rallies, and she goes around sort of slagging off trans people. And she, and she likes inviting fascists. And then in New Zealand, there were people doing Nazi salutes at her rally, and thousands of people turned up to chase her away. And she got some tomato juice on her head, and the police escorted her away, and she's cancelled her last one. So I'm happy. I'm happy that that the people of New Zealand didn't actually allow her a platform. I wouldn't apply that to every single, and there are gender critical people who explicitly distance themselves from her, and so fine, I make that distinction. But I'm just glad that she was chased out of New Zealand, and it's really, and she was chased out of lots of places in Australia as well.
What struck me about it, Ray, though, was that I mean, it was seized upon, particularly in the Spectator, as a chance to really show the trans community in a bad light. And the other thing I got to say about it is that I'd never heard of Posey Parker until the trans community protested against her. And sort of, is this not an example of when a protest backfires and you end up doing more harm than good?
No, because I think if you allow fascist groups to openly put their stuff out in the public sphere, then they will be encouraged and do more and more and more and more of it, and eventually you will hear them. Fascists start off small, and then if they're not challenged, then they just become bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm really emphasising the point. I'm not saying that every single gender critical or anti-trans campaigner needs to be treated this way, but Posey Parker, Kelly J, Keane Minshall is one of those, and I think if you don't stop them now, you'll be encouraged to keep going on and on. Of course, the Spectator will attack us. The Daily Mail was going hurrah for the black shirts. I mean, they always back these people. That's what they do. But I think it's important for people on the left to make a stand against this stuff. And it's good to see. And yeah, so we gave her publicity, but we also stopped her from speaking. And I think, it's not just her. There are lots of people out there. There's a lot of people, the LGBT Alliance people, who are not all as bad as her, but just they claim to be defending women. You see, they claim to be defending women against these terrible, beastly trans people, but actually they're quite happy to work with and take money from the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is an anti-gay, anti-abortion, right-wing conservative group in America. They take money from the Heritage Foundation in the USA, which is another anti-gay, anti-abortion, anti-feminist organization. So these people are defending women from trans people, but they're working hand in glove with loads and loads of organizations in America and here who are openly right-wing, anti-gay, anti-LGBT, anti-women, anti-abortion, right-wing conservative groups.
What strikes me about it, Ray, is that sort of, I cannot understand that these LGBT groups who oppose, who are transphobic, because it really is a case of that poem that they came for the trans people first. And when these people will not stop. and if they do manage to squash the trans movement, they'll move on to the LGBT movement, and sort of absolutely bonkers.
But they're already doing it. They're already doing it, John. I mean, they're already going, in America especially, they're already going for gay people and abortion rights, and the same people are going for trans people. So it's not like a question of they'll defeat trans people first, then move on to gay people and abortion. They're already doing it at the same time. But
Paul
then you get
Kerry,
people here claiming to be feminists, and they're working hand in glove with these people. It's extraordinary.
Paul and Kerry, have you any comments on this?
I would say there's a bit of a culture war that the right wing really, really do like. So, in my experience, trans people don't really, really want to make this into as huge an issue as it's becoming. So trans people want to be able to get on with their own lives, live the way they are, like, you know, trans women are women and trans men are men, and they don't want to make a big deal of these things. And I think what happens is this is a massive distraction. If you look at something like the Daily Mail or something like that, if they can get people up in arms about something that they don't quite understand, they can then distract you from the other things that are going on. And I do think that's what's going on here. I do think it's a culture war. I think it's something to divide us. But when they do call it, like, they frame it as a culture war, as if trans people are going, rah, 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 I want to be recognised. Like, they do want to be quietly recognised as women or quietly recognised as men, but they don't want a huge fuss, in my experience, because they just want to live their lives. And other people are making their lives more difficult by doing these things, by highlighting tiny cases. Like, so if some trans woman is in a women's prison and they've done some dreadful thing, then they'll say, ha ha ha. But, like, take any other group in the world, like whether that's black people or gay people or lesbian people or whatever, and then say, well, actually, I'm going to use one example of someone who happens to be in that group and use that for the whole group. You would just say, well, that's homophobia, that's racism, whatever. Why is transphobia considered to be different, and why do so many people go, yeah, is this the person? Like, this, an awful person in a, like, who's done something dreadful in a prison isn't representative of all trans people, you know. So yeah.
Kerry, what's your thoughts on this?
I agree with Paul. By, like, genuine trans people just want to live a happy life and be seen as people in society, which they genuinely are. But from a personal experience, I've been called transphobe by a man who's not trans, who's not anything. He just hates, well, he's a misogynistic person, because I refuse to say I chest fed my children, which really boils my blood. And I think that it's not the trans people who are creating the issues. It's these, like, misogynistic middle-aged men, from my personal perspective anyway, who are trying to cause issues and saying that they're trying to, like, water down women's rights again, where I think trans people don't want anyone's rights watered down. They just want their own. But it's other individuals who are trying to cause hatred between everyone, if you know what I mean. So I've even been reported for being transphobic for that, what I've got said there. But I just think, each of their own, they have every right, but I don't believe that these people who are not trans should be watering down women's rights.
Thank you.
That makes sense. I hope that doesn't sound wrong.
I mean, I don't care. I don't care about chest feeding or breastfeeding. It's all old nonsense. That's just nonsense. I mean, but they love these issues. The Daily Mail, 115 articles in 1 month. 115 articles in 1 month on anti-trans stuff. That's what we're facing. And any little sort of nonsense. I don't know who this bloke is you're talking about, but he's an idiot if he's making a huge fuss about that. And you go, who's that Tory MP in the Midlands? Is it Anderson? Is it Ian Anderson?
Oh, Lee Anderson.
Lee Anderson. I mean, he's actually said he's the vice chair of the Tory party, And he's actually said that the next election we partly won on trans rights and culture wars. That's exactly what they're trying to do.
Absolutely. This is the thing. Right. I'm going to move on now because we're now at 9:15 and we've done the first moment of the week.
Wasn't supposed to be a big.
The second one's going to be as much. Paul, I never fall out with Laura, but we disagreed on this. I thought that this ought to be a moment of the week. She thought it ought to be a big story. Corbyn and being banned from standing as Labour candidate in Islington. Make a comment about that for us.
So, in the least surprising move of the year so far, the Labour Party, Keir Starmer wrote a motion to the Labour Party National Executive Committee saying that Jeremy Corbyn shouldn't be allowed to stand as Islington MP for the Labour Party as the prospective parliamentary candidate. We knew this is what he wanted. We knew this is what he always wanted. And, you know, the thing for me is the reaction of the left-wing, so-called left-wing MPs, the Labour left. Now, they're all appealing and saying, oh, well, you know, we should be out there protesting and we should be appealing to Keir Starmer's better nature or whatever. Like, one, did they think that Keir Starmer didn't know exactly what he was doing the whole time? Keir Starmer is not a good faith actor. He lied about his 10 pledges. He is not a trustworthy person. So saying, oh yes, let's appeal to the NEC. If he thought that there was a chance of him losing that vote, imagine if Keir Starmer lost that vote. Keir Starmer loses that vote. He loses the Labour leadership. You know, he staked his reputation on this. So if they think for 1 second that he is going to renege on this, they're absolutely clueless. Now, I don't believe they are clueless. I believe they're in full self-preservation mode. I hope they prove me wrong. But I'm starting to think, like, you know, there's got to be a line somewhere. So for the Labour left, what's the line? If the line isn't Jeremy Corbyn basically nullified, expunged from history of the Labour Party, made into a pariah, being treated the way he was, if that is not the line, then there is no line. Therefore, there is no Labour left. Now, I know there are people, and Ray will disagree with me on this one, there are people working within the Labour Party who know exactly what kind of organisation the Labour Party is. They don't see it as the only vehicle of the left. They actually see it as, like, you know, something that maybe the left can have some influence on, or whatever. But there are some people who, like, will wax lyrical and say, oh, the Labour Party, it's the Workers' Party, it's got to do this. They have done dreadful things over time, and they've had left-wing people within it influencing it throughout history. I think that influence is now gone. I think the only reason to have any left-wing people at all is as a sort of beard for the left. You know, like look at us, we've got some left-wing credentials, but don't you dare say anything if you're left-wing. Don't you dare say anything left-wing. But we want you in the party controlled, so you're terrified of your own shadow, terrified to say anything. That's what the Labour right want. They are awful people who were terribly, terribly, terribly unpopular. And they absolutely, and I think this is not said enough, one of the reasons they hated Jeremy Corbyn is they hated his popularity. That's what they want for themselves. When Keir Starmer goes and talks about, like, people who smell weed and it destroys the life and stuff like that, he wants millions of people or thousands of people on the street coming out and hearing him, but they're not going to, because he's boring. No one likes him. And they hate the fact that Jeremy Corbyn was popular. Because they've never been popular themselves.
I mean, Ray, I know you've got an awful lot to say about this as well, because I was present before we got the show started and you were talking to Paul. I mean,
I said it all now, you missed it.
What is there to say about this, apart from the fact that the Labour leadership are vile, vindictive backstabbers, and they've waged this war of absolute defamation against a former leader? It's foul. I mean, once you've said that, what is there to say?
Well, the Labour Party, as Paul just said, I mean, but one of the people he's referring to, I think, is me. The Labour Party has always been a mixture of working class trade unionists and people who kind of want to improve the lot of working people at one end, and open representatives of capitalism the other end. That's always been the case. I mean, I think it's even Tony Benn said that it's not a socialist party, it's a party with socialists in it, you know. And of course, the Labour Party, partly because of our electoral system, the Labour Party's had a complete kind of monopoly on socialist left-wing membership and activity. In the main, electoral activity, especially. Well, obviously, other left-wing groups do other stuff around and do some useful campaigning and all sorts of stuff like that, of course. And I think what happened is that Corbyn scared the bejesus out of these people, because never there'd been lefties strong in the Labour Party before, but they'd never captured the leadership. There was never a possibility of a kind of a sort of a. I mean, Corbyn's no Marxist, by the way. Let's just make that clear. But even somebody who was kind of a moderate, principled social democrat like Jeremy Corbyn, getting their bum on the main seat behind the desk in number 10 and having that kind of access to the state scared the life out of them. And I think the message has gone out from the bourgeoisie, which I call the ruling class, if you like, as the message has gone out that will never be allowed to happen again. And that Starmer can't just do to the left what Blair did. He has to actually completely root the left out, root and branch. So because of that, it might well be that I'm expelled and those other people are expelled. Who knows? I think the treatment of Corbyn is completely despicable, but who's going to not agree with that? We all agree with that. I am concerned that the Socialist Campaign Group and the left trade unions and Corbyn himself, I'm wondering how much they've actually planned Plan B, like now what then? And it's not just a question of whether Corbyn stands it isn't or not. I mean, that's an issue, but it's not the main issue. I think the question is what happens to the entire left of the Labour Party? Do they stay? Do they go? What situation? Do they fight for their position? Does Unite use their power inside the party to boost the left, or do the Socialist Campaign Group support Jeremy Corbyn if he stands, or do they not? And if they support him, they'll all be expelled. And what then? I think these people need to get together and actually tell us what they're thinking. What are they going to do? We don't even know yet whether Corbyn's going to stand. I suspect now that he will. I've always been sure that he wouldn't, but I suspect he will now. And if he does, well, then we'll have to just decide what to do then, frankly. But I'd like to know the extent to which we've actually collaborated with and discussed this through with the left in general. Was it just like a family decision? I don't know.
I mean, I absolutely agree with that. The sort of the left, both outside and inside the party, need a bit of firm guidance or leadership. Kerry, what are your views on it, just quickly?
Oh, Joel, it's absolutely disgusting what they've done to Jeremy Corbyn. I believed in the Labour Party rule book that motions had to be given 7 to 14 days in advance, not 48 hours. And I was led to believe that it was a CLP that chose their candidate, not the leader. Keir Starmer is an absolute, he's got more faces than Big Ben. How can, well, he doesn't represent me anyway in general, but he sat with Corbyn, done the Brexit thing, everything like that, was his best friend, lied. He continuously talks about democracy in the Tory party. He needs to look in the mirror. What's the democracy in the Labour Party? There isn't any. If it doesn't suit their agenda, they're screwed. So I've been at the loop and I've been catching up on it today. And I'm really infuriated by it. Like, Corbyn's been an MP in Islington for 40 years. And today they've just said that, the NEC have said today, and shame on them trade unions who voted in with Starmer, shame on them. And I hope their membership massively drops now. I really do. They're an absolute disgrace, the lot of them.
I think it's interesting that, I mean, I didn't vote for Corbyn, and I was never a Corbynite, but I am being pushed that way. And sort of, I think Starmer's doing himself more harm than good. I mean, people see these things. The man's a disgrace. Unbelievable. Anyway, Kenny, what was your moment of the week?
Can I just say, just to add to that, remember, Starmer this week came out and praised Thatcher and blamed all the social problems on some people smoking some weed. This guy is totally everything that's going on, and he's talking about someone having the smell of weed wafting into a window, and it's ruining their lives. You're like, what a prat. What an absolute
prat. Give us a violin.
You might not like it a little bit, okay, but deal with it. Most people would just go, okay, right, I can smell weed, maybe I'll have a word with a neighbour, because it's not ruining your life. What's ruining lives is energy companies overcharging everyone. Like massive taxation on people with middle and lower incomes, cost of living crisis,
The highest
inflation,
child poverty
lack
rate in the
of
Northeast.
pay increases for teachers, for nurses, for doctors, for all these. That's what's ruining lives. Why is he not talking about that? Why is he saying Thatcher's brilliant? The guy is an absolute arsehole. He needs. Anyway,
I don't agree,
that's enough.
Because it's now nearly 9:30, and we aren't through the moments of the week yet.
We could have had a full thing about this, couldn't we, Pearl?
What was your moment of the week, Kerry?
Oh, well, the last couple of weeks, as you know, I've been on one about our GS in me being the national chair of Unite Community. And I've been a bit on one about our GS telling us we're getting a national lead and we're not. Well, we had our national forum last week in London, and all the coordinators were also there, the regional coordinators. And I said my piece, and I was dead proud of myself because I stayed dead calm and collected for Kerry. I didn't shout, I didn't swear, I didn't shout. I was really calm for me. And it's going back. And the regional coordinators are actually not very happy about it. And yeah, things might be happening and changing. But I opened my mouth in a good way for once, calm and collectively.
Well done. But don't change on the show. We need you to be.
No swearing.
I've got a moment of the week, everybody, which is not always the case, but I want to draw attention to the protests in Israel. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that that does not in any way mean that Israel wants to go back on the way it's treating the Palestinians. This is about the people of Israel complaining about the central government's attempt to take over the judiciary. It is not the people of Israel complaining about the continual victimization and persecution and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people from the West Bank. Paul.
Now it's time for the big story.
9:30. Well, Ray, the report on the Met Police. You're from London. You're in London. I mean,
Yeah.
You sort of what's your perspective on it as a Londoner? I mean, does it meet with your perceptions? Is it fair criticism?
It does. I mean, it's a multifaceted thing. I mean, thanks. As I'm the token Southerner here today, and it's my. But if you talk to anybody, young people in general in London, young Black people in London especially, the trust, if you like, or even the sort of, well, they don't have a feeling of safety with regard to the police. I mean, there's an absolute kind of hostility and a lack of trust on both sides between young people and the police, and for good reason. And of course, this Casey report has demonstrated that the police is institutionally sexist, racist, homophobic, and everything else. Kerry's from the South, I've been informed. Okay.
Me?
She hides it well, apparently.
I'm from the South.
Anyway, whatever. So I
You're
think
more important things, Kerry. Let's move. Ray, carry on.
You insult me, are we?
Kerry, there are more important things about where you're from.
anyway, so there we are. I thought I'd wind her up.
Oh yeah.
And of course, in general, I mean, there's this joke, isn't there, that young people spray on bridges and stuff saying all cops are bastards, ACAB. The thing is, I wouldn't quite say that. I'd say that all cops can be bastards. All cops have the potential to be bastards because what they do is they're obviously their job is to maintain order in the status quo. So if you live in a class society, an unfair class society, the police have this role of keeping that society going and keeping it unfair and keeping it as the same as it is. And so obviously that's one side of it. The police have this potential role. When you see police on picket lines or in demonstrations, they have that potential. But equally, there are police out there. I know there are children of relatives of mine who are police officers who try and do a good job. But then inside the police, and particularly in the Met, you get this whole kind of culture of what they call this locker room culture, the kind of bullying systematic bullying, sexism, racism, sort of macho. Particularly, apparently, this report demonstrates amongst the parliamentary and diplomatic corps and the firearms unit, which are famously bad for this sort of stuff. Then in amongst all that, you've also got an enormous lack of resources. I mean, there's an 18% smaller. They've lost 21% of their civilian staff, and so a lot of those admin jobs now have to be done by policemen. 66% of the specials policemen have gone. The CPSOs have been halved, like the other sort of top part-time coppers. And so, London's 126 police stations in London alone have been shut. So no, I'm not saying that by increasing police is a wonderful thing. I'm just saying that if you put so much pressure on police, that the managers can't manage, the managers can't sort of root out any of this stuff, even if they wanted to. And so there's a whole mixture of resources and putting people under stress on the background of an existing kind of racist and sexist and homophobic sort of barrack room, locker room culture. And I think all of those things have been highlighted. And do I think anything's going to change? Probably not, I suspect, because who are they going to get to change it? I think you'd have to take the Met apart and start again.
Now, I'm going to ask you this, Ray, because Owen Jones says the only answer to this is to just disband the Met, split it up.
Well, yeah, fine. I mean, that's almost obviously true, but then you have to replace it with something. I mean, unless you're going to have some sort of workers' militia, I guess. But what you need is a properly democratically controlled police force. I mean, the Met uniquely is not controlled by London, really. It's a kind of a national police force based in London because it has all those extra London responsibilities in terms of diplomatics and parliament and all that stuff. So I think you need a proper, thoroughgoing democracy at every level of the police, and it needs to be completely tied to locality. It has to be seen as a police force which responds to working class people. So you need proper democratic control at every station, locality, borough level. Because there are 32 boroughs in London, and there used to be a little kind of police squad for each borough. Now there's only 12 instead of 32. So you get like little decentralized police offices, but those areas are bigger than some counties in the rest of the country. There are some sort of bits of London that are bigger than all of Durham put together. So I think you need that. I think you need, clearly the black people are over policed. Their people are stopped and searched and handcuffed and they're battened and they're tasered more than white people are. You've got the most diverse community in the whole of the country, the most diverse city in the whole of the country, and yet 80% of the Met officers are white, and the majority of them don't live in London at all. And so there is a complete mismatch between people who want the police to do their kind of basic catching the bad guys stuff. Then there's the overall role that police play politically in society to uphold class differences in class society. And then there is this vile culture which has been allowed to develop, which you could see any police drama. You can see that it's so well known. It's entered into the police drama, isn't it?
Thank you. I mean, it's all very worrying, Paul. I mean, at the same time, we've seen this week all this explosion about misuse of strip searches. I mean, do you think that this is a problem with the police as a whole, or is it just focused on the Met? I mean, have we lost our way with policing in general?
I kind of wish that we had Chantel on tonight because she'd have all the stats that we would need for this. But the Met wasn't even one of the most corrupt police forces when they looked into all the problems. Like the Met is a huge problem, but the police force in general. And again, this is down to institutions. I have friends that are in the police that I hope do a really good job, and I think they will do a really good job. But institutions are a big problem. Whether that's political parties, whether that's a political system, people are okay, but institutions give people excuses to behave in a certain way, and that's what you've got. You've got an institution that is doing something incorrectly. They're doing something wrong. Are they there to protect the people? Are they behaving in a certain way? Are they racially profiling people? Why are they behaving as they are, these are the questions we need to be asking. So, like, it is a problem with the institution of the police. Now, if you look back in time, what were the police set up for? A lot of people say the police were originally set up to make sure that slaves couldn't run away and things like that. They were there to protect the establishment. They were there to protect people's property. They were there to protect the rich. So the people are like, oh yeah, the police are there to protect us. Not really the case. And anyone who's ever been on a protest and thought to themselves, are they here for us or are they here for them? Now, sometimes I've been treated really well on protests when you've got a bunch of violent thugs up against you who are racist, and they kind of like, they can be quite positive on the side of anti-racists, or sometimes they aren't. But also, I've been like, as a kid, I was there, the poll tax marches and things like that, and the police were not there to protect the people. They were there to suppress that. And if you look at
strike, you saw that during the miners' strike.
Yeah, the miners' strikes and the occupation of Easington, and So, let's understand what the police actually are, and if we're going to reform something, again, it's back to accepting reality. Accept the reality of what the police are. If we want to do something about it, then great. But don't be like, oh yeah, this is somehow some sort of failure. This is not by accident.
Where would you start if you were the government? I mean, I think this comes out of a Tory government, because the Tory government just make rules and try and impose. They try and browbeat people into doing the right thing instead of putting people in a position where they're free to do the right thing. So how do you set about doing something about the police as they are?
We need a wholesale change to the attitudes towards the causes of crime, what crime actually is. We need to be looking at a societal level. And I was speaking to my friend about this the other day. One of my friends is starting to get heavily into charities that try to rehabilitate criminals, because that side is totally gone as well. People can have a terrible life. Awful things can happen to them, and then they become a criminal, and that can be awful things like sexual abuse and things like that, and then they become sexual abusers. These people's behaviour is kind of made, and it's circumstantial. How do you change that? Well, you actually have to change people's life circumstances if you don't want to have those behaviours created.
I'm going to interrupt you again, Paul. I'm so sorry, but the fact is that when you come out of prison, you come out with so little support and help and resources that very often the only thing you can do is go right back into the community, into the group with whom you were a criminal to start with.
Yeah, and well, if you look at
if you want to go straight, you give no help to do so.
Yeah, and it's almost like, we don't take into account anything. If look at Glasgow when they had a huge knife crime problem. Now there's a lot of racial profiling around knife crime. If you stop and search and things like that, Glasgow had a huge knife crime problem. They dealt with it by trying to address poverty. The link between poverty and crime is huge. It's nothing to do with race. It's nothing to do with all these things. But then people will racially profile people. The Met will racially profile people and search them. They're more likely to search a young black male than they are to search a rich-looking white male. That's just a factually accurate statement.
Can I move on to Kerry? Kerry, just one question for you. This week, both Starmer and Sunak have outlined how they're going to stop antisocial behaviour. And a key thing for both of them is more rules and more powers to the police. At the very time when we're sort of saying there's this huge misuse of powers. Well, I mean, what's your response to these approaches to antisocial behaviour?
It's a complete and utter pile of tosh. It's absolute crap. What does Starmer and Rishi Sunak know about living in highly deprived areas full of crime and antisocial behaviour? Have they got a clue? They'd probably wear a stab vest if they walked on where I live. But they haven't got a clue. They're just out of touch. I mean, Middlesbrough had like a trial going on, like with heroin addicts, like they'd give them like safe needles and stuff like that to stop them shoplifting, and that they abolished all that, and it just made me bad. Like they abolished it all, and like walking around Middlesbrough town centre now, it's like one big crack den. Like God forgive me, is anyone like having a pipe or and the mayor, who seems to be independent, is actually a Tory, but the police have a hard time on their hands because the Dean is not doing anything, but it's not within their powers to do it, especially with it regarding antisocial behaviour where I live. But seriously, Sir Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak having a bit of an edge on crime and what they're going to do about it. It's just, they haven't got a clue. They just have not got a clue. And I think that they need to have someone from those areas part of the planning of what they will do about antisocial behaviour.
Thank you. Ray, you got a moment. Have you got a final comment about this before we move on?
Well, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said, really. I think the idea that you can only defeat crime by repression without looking at I mean, even Blair used to say tough on the causes of crime. Now, he didn't mean it, but at least he said it. The idea that, if you've got sort of massive deprivation, I mean, people can see it from just watching Happy Valley. It's as obvious as that the crime doesn't come from the sky. It comes from people's real circumstances. People commit crimes for sensible. There are really evil and bad people out there. There are also a lot of people just drawn into crime for all sorts of reasons. And proper community-based, democratically controlled local policing, combined with actually improving people's actual living standards and housing standards, and giving addicts, for example, the proper medical help they need, rather than throwing them in prison. And decriminalizing drugs, I think, is essential. All that kind of stuff. So, Starmer's gone for this because it's cheap, it's vote winning, and he's looking for stuff that's cheap because he won't have any money to spend on anything else. So he's just looking for ways of getting votes in some particular demographics and not spending any money.
I'll just say one thing as a teacher. Thank you, Ray. I'll just say one thing as a teacher, that as a teacher, you realise very early on that having very draconian rules and not implementing them is just chaotic in your classroom. What you need actually quite small rules. I just used to write their name on the blackboard, but you need to do it every time they cross the line that you've set. And it's consistency and implementation rather than huge laws which get a class to behave. And it's very much the same with antisocial behaviour. You've got to do what you say you'll do, but you don't actually need to say that you're going to castrate them. You just need basic decent restrictions. Right. Last thing. We won't have time for French riots, Kerry. French riots will have to wait. Paul.
Good.
Was the death of Bruce Perry a tragic reaction? Or does it belie a deeper problem?
So this is about the head teacher who tragically, killed herself because of waiting for an Offsted report. Now, a lot of the focus for me has been on Offsted, and quite rightly, Offsted is an institution where they come in, and I often say about Offsted, with great power comes no responsibility. And what I mean by that is they come into a school, they make a judgment based upon a couple of days in there, and then they go away, and they have no responsibility to fix any issues that they have. I've always said that schools do need to be inspected and overseen, but that should be a partnership. That should be local democratically controlled authorities, which they've got rid of in with academies and things like that, coming in, inspecting a school, and if they see a problem, then they would have a say and a responsibility to put that right. So rather than them coming in and just finding a problem, and it's very easy, we could come in here and I could come round someone's house and I could say, oh, that's out of place, that's untidy, blah, 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 and then walk out and then leave it. And that's what Offsted do.
The thing, Paul, is that you'd go into my house and you'd wander around, and my house is actually very tidy and clean. I keep it very tidy and clean. But what you'd do is you'd open one cupboard which was momentarily untidy, and you would say, this cupboard is inadequate, therefore this is an inadequate house. That's
Yeah, and
what
it's a really good analogy, actually, because that is sometimes what they do. Now, in my experience, Ofsted inspectors personally have been quite fair with me. I've always come out quite well, and they've always said nice things about me personally, and I always think they've given fair outcomes. But I've seen incredibly unfair things done in Ofsted inspections as well. Now, Ofsted inspectors are becoming increasingly realistic, but they also realise that the curriculum is increasingly unrealistic. So I've been to Ofsted training things where they say, right, okay, we know you can't follow the curriculum because it's too big and there's too many things for everyone to learn. So we expect you to be making sure that people in your class are learning things that they need to learn in order to build up a solid foundation to build on the next thing. But we also know the government expect you to follow the curriculum. So therefore, you also have to follow the curriculum. Wink. So that's... They know it's ridiculous. They know the Ofsted inspectors are actually fighting back about this. So this isn't just about Ofsted. This is about the entire institution. For me, the biggest problem is league tables. If schools are not competitive bodies, people should not be coming in and saying, right, okay, in order to find the best school to send children to, you should have them all compete against one another. For, there will be 80% of people who will get a grade 4 or above, and you all have to battle it out. It's a battle royale. And, it's a really, really silly thing to do, because then there's demographic issues, people from different backgrounds. A brilliant school could have people who maybe are just naturally not going to attain as highly academically, but they might do other wonderful things with those students. League tables are the root cause of all these problems. If you want schools to compete against one another and then have people go in and judge people based upon competing with one another, again, it's a systemic thing. It's an institutional thing. And the institution is the DfE. So it's not just Ofsted that's the problem. We need to be looking at things from really how they're done at a classroom level, what we're there for. Teachers are telling me now that they are bored out of their brains teaching, because they have to just stand there, be total robots, show no personality, get through the curriculum as quickly as they can, get people through the school, and just make it like an exam factory. Don't interact with them. It's not fun. It's not fun being a teacher. My school's a little bit different, actually. I do get to have a little bit of fun. I do get to talk to the students, because mine's there for social, emotional, mental health. So we're there to develop those issues as well. We're there to develop those aspects of their personality. We're there to help them interact with society better. So interaction is very, very key. But other teachers are telling me that it's incredibly boring in mainstream education at the moment. Imagine what kind of a life that is for our children. Just to come in, be prepared to work in a boring job, complete these tasks, and then for what? What in the world is there academia for? You'll get this academic qualification and then be a cleaner. There's nothing wrong with being a cleaner, by the way. It's an incredibly important job. It should be well paid. But some people want to be cleaners and they have to be academic. It's a nonsense situation that we're in.
Absolutely agree with you, Neil Terry. Sort of league tables mean schools chase exam results rather than genuine good education. I've got so much to say on this, but I'm going to control myself. Kerry, should Ofsted be scrapped then?
I think it should be massively reformed. I think that we need some kind of governing body for our schools, definitely, but not all schools. It's like they've got these criteria that every child in every part of the country and every school has to fit into. I totally agree with what Paul said there about teaching being boring. I've got a 17-year-old son who was non-academic, who left school last year, and he's in college now. Then I've got a daughter who is massively academic, and teachers are just seen as though they're like robots in front of this whiteboard, teaching the same thing and whatever, and they have to follow this criteria. And I think that Ofsted needs massively reforming. I mean, our secondary school was in special measures for years, and I think it took them 4 years to get out of special measures, and it's all about leadership and stuff like that, where the well-being, the main focus, what I've read about the Ofsted reports when it comes to our secondary school, there's no focus on the child's well-being. It's all about the managerial roles or the leadership within that school. It's not about a child or molding an education around to a child. It's like the child has to fit in. If you have a round child, they have to fit into this square. There's only one criteria for a child to fit into. It's not molded around the child. It's not a child-centered approach. And that's what Ofsted needs massively reforming. I don't believe that you can get someone from London coming up and inspecting kids, and it's different ethnic backgrounds, different communities, different areas, different regions. And I think that it needs massively reforming. And I don't believe that we should have academies anymore. I think it should go back to local authority.
Be with you. Shh, I'm telling you. Ray.
Well, John's agreeing with me. The English teacher's agreeing with me, John. I'm so proud of myself tonight.
What, in your opinion, Ray, should be the function of Ofsted, and how would you change the regime, the inspection regime, if you could?
Well, I'd get rid of Ofsted as such, but I think obviously no one's going to say that you have schools where there's never any inspectorate of standards. Of course you want that, but I think as Paul was suggesting, I used to be a governor of a school years ago. Like I was never a parent, but I was a kind of a co-opted governor. After the Labour Party sacked me, I became a governor, co-opted on. And what became clear, there was an official who used to sort of run our governors' meetings, and they'd be present in the school. They'd come often, and they'd work with the school and work. The local authority officer rep would work with the school to work through any problems they had, and they'd consistently monitor it. And if there were problems with the management and the administration, or the levels of education, or the things to do with curriculum, they'd work with the school to improve it. It seems Ofsted isn't really concerned with working with schools to get better. It's concerned with demonizing them. So what I would have like a rolling program of visits without kind of ending up in some kind of exam. Because I mean, I remember when I was training, I've never been a school teacher, but I was a teacher of adults, and we had our own separate inspection thing. And it's nerve-wracking when you're being inspected in that way. It's nerve-wracking. You never teach your best anyway. The whole school is like under massive stress, and they don't always do the best in any case. So if you had a much more sort of long-term, ongoing relationship with a school's inspectorate, run from the local authority, I agree absolutely that the academies should be out, and the academies obviously don't always do that well under Ofsted either. They're not even. It's not like academies even better than state schools. So you need a proper long-term plan to work with schools to raise their standards. But standards doesn't just mean exam passes either, because what you got all this obsession with qualifications, and yet the more qualifications you get, the more jobs ask for qualifications.
Right,
so you get
interrupt you there just 2 seconds. I went to I taught at a school, and they came to Ofsted us, and in every category virtually the school got excellent, and sort of we were very, very pleased because category after category the report was excellent, and then the overall result was good. And we said, why? How have you come up with this when we had excellent in every category? Because if you were an excellent school, you would have excellent exam results. And your exam results aren't excellent. So we're not going to give you excellent. And it's exactly what you were saying, that it's just the categorization and the unfair demonization of schools.
I mean, well, I was that generation where the year before me, you could have left school at 15. And there are loads of jobs you could get without any qualifications at all then, because most people didn't have qualifications because they left school at 15. I'm the only one in my family to stay on after 15. But then everyone had to stay on. So everybody took exams. So that meant ordinary manual jobs starting to ask for exams. It's just a way of, the more qualifications you get in an unequal class society, the more qualifications you get, the more devalued those qualifications become. And so you're on this hamster wheel of stress and testing. And the kids are going balmy, by the way. It's had a terrible effect on the mental health of kids in schools. and it is trying to fit like square kids into round holes or vice versa, you know. And it's like not designing an education for them, it's making them fit into a pre-established scheme. And it's a shocking state of affairs, and it's damaging the kids, it's driving teachers to distraction. And I really think that that you need sort of a local inspector who can work with the school long term and look at the whole school and benefit the kids themselves, and try to fit the school to the kids rather than the other way around.
Bring back HMI.
Yeah.
Don't publicise the results in the newspaper. That's part of it, the problem. And that's why schools run terrified. That's why they can't. So that's why they run terrified of Ofsted, because once you lose your reputation, you lose an awful lot else as a school.
Education was invented just to fit kids into like ordinary jobs, you know, and they never really wanted to educate working people. They just wanted to fit us into their pre-existing career patterns, didn't they?
Those bad old days when some children went on to A-levels and universities and others went and got a 7-year apprenticeship and came out with a skilled trade. Those bad old days that we needed to lose so we could make every child get GCSE. And the other thing, Ray, is they must all be above average. Every child and every school must be above average.
I know.
John.
Anyway.
John. Would it surprise you if I told you I have not got one GCSE to my name? Probably will. It would surprise you, to be honest.
Well,
but yeah.
I absolutely agree. The fact is that GCSEs are utterly irrelevant to how you do in life. They are merely a stepping stone to go on to something else. And the problem is for so many children, it's a stepping stone in the wrong bloody direction. That's the problem. Anyway, I'm going to everybody. I told you I'd get upset about this. Calm down, John, calm down. First of all, I have to thank Ray for putting up with us. Thank you so much, and you're so welcome on that. We must have you back again. Thank you for your knowledge and your erudite answers. Thank you, Kerry, for your down to earth confirmation of everything that I believe in. Well done. God bless you. And Paul, thank you for being the boss. And I almost did. I've ignored your comments because it's been so intense on here. Thank you so very much for the comments you've made. I'm sure they were brilliant, but I didn't have time to read them. So that I'm going to say bye-bye from me. Love you all. The justicios, we have to call you. I called you the politicos, but I think it was somebody came up with, Jacqueline Hemmings came up with justicios because we're after justice. So, but goodbye, justicios. Thank you for listening to us. And I'm going to hand over to Paul to just bring the thing to an end. God bless.
Okay, thanks everyone, and thanks everyone on the panel. It's been absolutely lovely, and thanks to you, John, for doing what you do so well. Thanks.
Trying to control.
Yeah, control this unruly mob. The comments tonight have been really good. Some of my favourites towards the end there were just not a celebration, but a recognition of the really important jobs that are done, like cleaning and sweeping the streets and keeping things going, and unpaid carers and all those jobs that are so vastly important that aren't valued by education or our society at all. Those are things that we need to talk about. And also the people who are paid to be unemployed, you know, so the unemployed people as a reserve workforce, we need to think of them as workers as well. That's really important. So thanks to all of you for those comments. Please do get involved in everything. If you're on the Labour left, have a look at yourself and see what you're going to do about this situation. I left the Labour Party. I'm so happy to have done so. I could not live with inside it because, I understand some people will remain in. Nah. Ray. I've actually back Ray's reasons to be in the Labour Party, but very few people should be in there, to be honest. Have a think about that. Join Socialist Think Tank. Independent media, really, I could have had about 9 moments of the week. I could have talked about the potential for another teachers' strike after the really ludicrous offer that was completely insulting to teachers. I could have talked about that. I could have talked about the Media Democracy Festival that Laura chaired a panel on media democracy, which is absolutely brilliant. The Independent Media Association, the work that we're doing, and, you know, more and more I can see independent media breaking incredible stories while the mainstream media kind of just go along with this weird status quo thing. Little WhatsApp messages from like politicians to one another that really is boring and nothing to do with anyone's lives. So support independent media, follow Cow Daily, follow all the Independent Media Association, follow the Prisma, follow all those people on social media. Do support them financially if you can as well. Make sure you do that for us if you can as well. And Left Horizons, of course, what a brilliant independent media outlet that is as well. So, okay, have a lovely evening, everyone, and thanks for being with us. Hugely important people, the fifth panelist, those people at home. Take care, everyone, and we will see you soon.
God bless you.
Keep the red flag flying here.